So I'm Jen Jortner-Cassidy. I am currently a senior customer success manager at LinkedIn. I focus specifically on LinkedIn learning for higher education. And I'm also a graduate of the Mindfulness Studies program at Lesley University. And before that, I received my master's in adult and organizational learning from Suffolk University in Boston.
The topic that we're talking about is self-compassion for job seekers. And you're working with people in higher education, in learning and LinkedIn learning and all kinds of aspects of learning.
One of the things I love about my job is that I get to be a guest in a lot of different worlds. So working within higher education, I'm serving a pretty diverse population of people. So at a very high level, that could be faculty, staff, or students. So faculty have had to adjust very quickly to doing everything remotely, pretty much overnight. Um, the staff at universities and staff serve in a wide variety of functions, but those that are working in particular with students, say like career services, they're trying to adapt and do things in new ways, virtual career fairs, lots of webinars, things along those lines. And then the students really run the gamut. So oftentimes when you say student and you think of college students, you think of someone who's 18 or 19 years old and they're away from home for the first time, like that traditional notion of a student. But a student could be many things. It could be someone who, is 18, 19, 20 years old and they're having more of that traditional student experience. But it could also be an adult who's working full time and part time, finishing a degree that they started years ago or going to school for the first time. Could also be graduate or PhD student, some who have been in online programs the whole time, some that are making the adjustment now, full-time, part-time. There's so many kind of different configurations, so to speak, of people that I'm working with.
So you are in a position where you kind of get to hear people's stories. And do they share their struggles when they're maybe older and trying to get back into school, supporting a family or whatever? Do they share with you their struggles? And then you have the newbies coming in with little experience, and they have their own set of struggles. So what are you seeing now with that?
I think there's a commonality with the struggles, regardless of if you're new to your career or if you've had a lot of career experience and maybe you're looking to make a change. And I think that's rooted in uncertainty, especially right now. There is a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. We don't know what's going to happen with job market and with the economy. And so what I encourage people to do on LinkedIn when I'm working with them, particularly on their LinkedIn profiles, is really to tell their professional story and to not discount the experiences that they've had in the past. And, if they are job seekers, maybe right now in this climate, you're not going to get your dream job, but can you look at getting a job that will make you happy and help you to build your skills for whatever comes next? So there's a lot of dimensions to my job. Delivering Rock Your Profile sessions, talking about LinkedIn, helping people present themselves. That's the fun part of my job. There's an element to my job too, working for a tech company and supporting LinkedIn learning for large campuses where if the technology is not working the way it's supposed to work, I get people, really upset and eager to get things fixed. And I'm not the technical person, I'm the client facing person. And that can be quite stressful, especially if it's a global issue where, there's a lot of people having the same experience. So I will cite my bartending experience as critical into forming the professional that I am today, 20 something years later, because nothing prepared me for the crazed state of chaos that my job can sometimes be, like working in a bar in Dublin on a Saturday night. So my point in that is that from every experience you learn something, you gain skills, and it's part of your story. It's part of what generates who you are.
So you would say that telling your story in a cohesive way is a real, and developing that and learning how to convey that is, even though you think it might not be related, is really important. And I think it's also, as a mindfulness person that you are, it's important in feeling that sense of wholeness that we feel, as to not, you create those little separations in our mind, like, oh, that's the Jen that has fun, and this is the work Jen, and this is the the partner Jen, and all these different things, like to really create that sense of wholeness. So could you suggest what would people do if their story didn't sound very positive, if the talk that they're telling themselves isn't very positive, if you have kind of a negative self-talk and we end up with that kind of frenemy or even enemy telling us, talking to us and giving us that critical inner voice, what would you suggest to people who notice that?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the first thing I would suggest is that everyone has that voice, but from my experience, and I haven't studied this in a scientific way, but I would bet you that everyone has that voice, from executives and CEOs to people in governmental positions. Everyone has that voice. So it's normal. It's a normal part of being a human. I find that people sometimes struggle with telling their professional story and showcasing what they're good at on LinkedIn to the world, because it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you're being braggy, or it can feel like you're being grandiose. And I try to get people to flip that narrative by saying, if you have something to offer to the world, everyone has a gift, everyone has things they're good at, everyone has things they're not good at, but you have something you're good at, you have something to offer to the world. If the world doesn't know about that, then you're actually doing the world, you're doing our society a disservice. So I try to get people to flip that narrative by getting them to think about it that way. It's hard, but the other thing I suggest is just really reflecting on one question, and that is, what do I want to be professionally known for? And then start to write that narrative from there, and find a trusted mentor or friend to kind of run through it with, and say, like, is this making sense? What would you suggest for me? Because there will be nuances depending on what field or what industry you're in. But at the end of the day, I think I'd want anyone who's watching to know that you have a gift to give. And if we don't know about it, you're not going to be able to give it. So when I do workshops, there's a worksheet that we use, and it kind of goes through some of these questions. And Stephanie, I'm happy to provide that to you. It's open. There's nothing secret about it. And depending on the context, oftentimes I will have people work on it individually. This works much better when we can be in a classroom face to face, but I'll have people work on it individually, and then maybe meet in groups to discuss. And that question, what do you want to be professionally known for, is one of the reflection questions, where we invite folks just to kind of freely write down whatever comes to mind. In lieu of being in that environment, I will encourage people to take that worksheet and do that reflection in a very analog way. So in other words, just print it out if you can, if you have a printer. Take pen to paper without any digital distractions. Really reflect on it, and then you can start to kind of formulate that story that you want to tell on your LinkedIn profile. And this is really where a trusted friend or mentor could help. Sometimes you just need that second opinion, that outside perspective to help, because no one should have to do this alone. I didn't do this alone. I mean, I come at this very humbly, as someone who, when I became a LinkedIn employee, my profile was okay. It wasn't spectacular. So I had to do this exercise with myself, and it does take some time and reflection.
So I'm hearing you say that you find that it's really important to have mentors and networking. And if, let's say, you lose a job and you lose a lot of your social connections, people have reported that they lose their social connections, how would you suggest using like a network like LinkedIn, or using some kind of groups that meet out or will meet out again after all of this pandemic, to keep those social connections so that we might be heard. I love what you said about the way that you do that in your workshops, is that you listen and you let people be heard. It is really important to tell their professional story and to think about what you want to be known for, especially now during this pandemic, during all this crazy stuff that's happening in the world. How would you say people should connect?
I think what's important is that you connect, right? There's kind of a notion we use in our workshops of nurture your network. Like, don't be that person who only reaches out when you need something. So I think just checking in with people and simply saying, hello, I'm thinking of you, or hello, how are you doing today? Even with a simple text message or a message on LinkedIn or whatever your platform of choice is, can be really powerful. So I think it's important to recognize the ways of keeping in touch that best serve you. Social platforms can certainly be a great way to do that, but I think social platforms are like French fries. A few are great. If you eat like the entire bag, maybe that's too much. And yes, I haven't eaten the entire bag, so I can say that from experience. So I think the important thing is just to make sure you're keeping those connections, however best serves you, and also understanding the power of your network. So, if you are in a situation where you've lost your job, think about what's the ideal that comes next. And maybe that ideal isn't attainable right now in our current environment. But if there's a particular role that you want, or there's a particular organization that you want to work for, see if you know anyone who's currently there, or see if you know anyone who can introduce you to someone who's there. And then you can start to make connections that way.
For someone who is looking for a job, who is long-term unemployed, who's not feeling great about themselves, what can they do so that they can feel better, so they can do better, so that when they get in front of that hiring manager, they can get the job? Because you have to be positive, you have to be on your A game, and you have to, be an asset to the company. Do you have any 1, 2, 3 wisdom that you could share based on your experience?
As a smile file. That would be a great thing to start to create. So this could be, digitally or, analog, but a collection of notes or emails or messages that you've gotten from people who have reached out to just say they really appreciate something you've done for them, or just to say thank you, or, highlighted some work you've done. Because on those bad days, you can always go back and look at that. Secondly, just spend some time and reflect on what your gifts are, on what you can share with the world. So really identify what are those gifts that you have to offer.
The traditional ways to express self-compassion might be the ways of kind self-talk and taking a bath, having a cup of tea. But do you have any wacky ways of expressing self-compassion?
Taking time for me to, and I think sometimes I loosely refer to meditation as just disconnecting from stimulation. I walk away from my computer. I go sit, I have a meditation room in progress next to my office. I go sit in there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever I need. And sometimes I, actually meditate, but sometimes I just sit there and do nothing. And I do that before I go to meet up with my husband, to kind of give me that space between work and personal, and in fairness to me, and also in fairness to him. So that's probably it's so simple, but I think that's probably the most important ritual that I have, and being really disciplined about that. It's on my calendar.
So you're really practicing in life a mindfulness practice of being present in the moment, trying to engage with whatever is in front of you. And that really does bring a sense of a wholeness.
It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
We're humans. And I think in this age of technology, we've been trained to think that our brains can process information in the way that a computer can. it can't. There's limits to what our brains are capable of processing. So that's probably one of the most important things I learned in the mindfulness studies program is, the brain science behind all of this. Like it's a real thing.
And mindfulness is one of those precursors to self-compassion, because without the awareness of where there might be some suffering, then we don't know to be compassionate to ourselves. I think your wisdom on how to help people who are going through this time of looking for jobs and perhaps being not employed, not just unemployed, but not employed because for other reasons, maybe they're caregiving for their family or for their parents. And I think that you gave so much really good uh, information and advice from your own experience. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie, for doing this work. It's my pleasure to be a part of it.